Repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping our arms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Anyone ever been in a tough place in their life? Let's do that again, and then just look around. And the one person that doesn't have their hand up is lying, so don't worry. So all of you who've been in a tough place in your life, have you all made it through it? All of you who made it through that tough place, please raise your hand. Also look around. Amazing. You all survived. Right? You made it through. The last one that you thought you'd never make it through. The one before that you thought you'd never make it through. All these challenges, all these conflicts, all these difficulties that arise in our life. And at the moment we think what? Not going to make it through. My life is over. How am I ever going to get through this mess? And yet somehow you manage to pull yourself together enough to arrive here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. So you've made it through. And all the difficulties that you'll face going forward, which you will face, there will be them, you will make it through those as well. But what our mind has a tendency to do is get stuck and fixated on this place that says, I'm never going to make it through this. And this is the end of the world and the end of my life. And the Buddhist teachings on impermanence tells us that all conditioned phenomena come together for a period of time and then cease to exist. So every experience that you're having in your entire life, every experience, whether you call it good or bad or neutral, every experience will just one day poof and be gone. One moment, poof, gone. Diamond Sutra talks about it being life being like a dream, a bubble, an illusion. Everything is just these moment-to-moment experiences that then cease to exist. But the thing that gets in the way, that ruins it for us, is our mind. Because our mind picks whatever it wants in whatever's going on in our life and says, this is the worst thing in the world, and I'll never make it through. I'll tell you what, if you had enough resources, wherewithal, ability to show up here tonight on a Tuesday night, probably had something to eat today, probably had a place to sleep, whether you like that place or not is irrelevant. Probably have at least one person in your life that loves you and cares about you. If you had these conditions created in your life today, then you are incredibly blessed and fortunate. And should actually feel grateful and lucky that you have these things. But again, our mind comes into play and doesn't want to look at those things. It just wants to look at everything we don't have, and everything that's wrong, and everything that's a mess, and everyone else we can blame, and all the other problems. So our mind chooses what to focus on, what to fixate on. And the meditation practice is training the mind to do just that. Because to have a meditation practice without understanding why training the mind is important, you're just kind of sitting and breathing. But learning to have the ability to train the mind on where you want to focus and where you want to look is life-changing. And all day long, we choose where and what we want to look at, like as we're physically going through our day. Right? We choose to look over there. We choose to look over there. We choose to look at things with our eyes. And the stuff I'm talking about is learning to choose where you look with your mind and with your heart. It's the same thing. Most of us just aren't that good at it because we've conditioned ourselves our whole lives to just look at all the bad stuff. Never have I ever figured out why, nor am I going to spend any moments trying to figure out why. To me, it's more important to just figure out, how do I train the mind to look at the positives in my life and all that I have to be grateful for. And as I'm training my mind to look at all the positives in my life and all that I have to be grateful for, I'm learning to then just have gratitude and appreciation. The alternative is you could just complain all day long. I love the little laughters and you can't see all the smiles on everybody's faces, right? When we complain, how do we feel? Bad. You said that, right? Yeah. So do you complain a lot? Yeah. What's your name? Garrett? Yeah. And you're brand new, right? I'm brand new. Like first time here. It's always most fun when I pick on brand new people. So you complain all the time. And literally all the time. Yeah. Oh God, I'm not even sure where to go with this. But when you're complaining, there are other people on the receiving end of that, right?
Yeah.
Why do you do that to them?
Sometimes we do it together.
Okay. Fair enough. Right? Yeah, for sure. And that works too. But where I was going with this is when we complain all day long, then we make others. Maybe that's the way you kind of justify it. Like, okay, look, I'm going to torture you and you're stuck listening to my complaining for an hour. And in return, I will force myself to be stuck and listen to your complaining for an hour. So it's kind of like this mutual agreement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I guess that works. Not where I was going at all, but at least you've got a good understanding. My point is that when we're complaining, then we force others to sit and listen to all of our crap. Selfish. And they do it because they love us, they care about us, they're good friends or family or whatever. They'll listen to us just like we listen to them. But if we're not complaining all day long, then we don't have to force anybody else to sit and listen to us complain all day long, which is a really nice gift to give people. So, yeah. All right. We're going to start with some meditation. To those who are joining virtually, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free as you are to just chime in, say hello. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. For those who are sitting for the first time or maybe sitting here for the first time, a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. Right? You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. This practice is not escaping from the chaos. It's learning to be quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide in the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or a chair, however you're seated, just trying to sit up straight. Staying comfortable, shoulders are relaxed, hands are on the knees or lap, whatever's comfortable. If you need to move, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. And for those who are new, you're not trying to empty your mind, you're not trying to go blank, you're not trying to think nothing. Your mind will race. I will say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought and bring you back to present moment, or simply to wake you up because you've fallen asleep. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. And as the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness. In quiet. Just sitting. Breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit, hold the hands, or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's what we get. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. Imagine going a day without being disturbed by someone. Imagine going an hour without being disturbed by someone. Most of you won't even make it out of these doors before you're disturbed. Someone will run into you trying to get your shoes. This practice is not easy. Meditation is not always fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And as we all know all too well, the present moment is very often incredibly difficult and painful and filled with conflict and challenges. And so this practice is learning to be with life as it arises and sit with it, which is very different from what most of us do with conflict in our lives. We spend so much time running. And this practice isn't running. It's sitting with it, being with it. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And that's why it's so easy. You just have to learn to be nice to each other. To be kind to everyone. Most importantly, where do we often lack the most kindness? So, it starts there. All the stories you've been telling yourself about what a terrible person you are, and how mean you've been to people, and everyone you've let down, and everyone you've failed, and everyone you've disappointed. All the stories you've been telling yourself about what a terrible person you are. Stop the story. That's just not true. You're just a human. Done some good, done some bad. That's life. As I said at the beginning of this evening, learn to just find gratitude and appreciation for every single experience that you have. As the Buddha referred to it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Because that's what we get. An entire life's worth of experiences, and then one moment, our whole life is done. And we can't get it back. So all the time we spend angry, sad, miserable, depressed, we're missing opportunities to appreciate the beauty of everything that's in our lives. All the people, all the family, all the friends, all the strangers. There's so many wonderful things and people and places in our lives to experience. But again, as I talked about at the beginning, learning to train the mind on where to focus is critical. And it starts with the breath. Just learning to be with the breath as it rises and falls. And that's all. Because that's hard enough. So with that, I'll pause. And for me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind at this moment. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for that. And again, for those who are joining virtually, welcome. There's a chat box somewhere on your screen. Feel free to say hello. If you have thoughts or questions, put them there, and I'll do my best to respond as well. So we'll open up to questions. Yeah.
What's like the overall goal of these practices?
Great question. What's the overall goal of these practices? Is there an end game? How old are you? I was going to guess 19. I'm getting pretty good at this. There's no end game. There's no beginning game. There's no game. There's just moment after moment after moment of your entire life. Buddhist practice, I strongly suggest you don't have any goal whatsoever. You have the opportunity to be kind to yourself and everybody you encounter. That's the practice. And whatever comes from that is whatever comes from that. But very often in life, we set goals. And I'm not suggesting that goals aren't important. It's a very practical, right? I mean, the Buddha talked about craving and desire as the root cause of our suffering, constantly wanting more, never happy with what we have, always angry at what we have, always afraid we're going to lose everything, right? But I understand that, you have goals, you have healthy cravings, healthy desires. As the Buddha said, without the desire to suffer less, none of us would be here right now, right? But what comes with goals is also what? The idea of failure. How does failure feel?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. You're getting good at it?
You're
getting great at it. You have mastered the art of failing.
Working.
It's actually a really beautiful thing to be able to fail and be able to fail well.
Yeah.
It's completely different from where I was going with you, but I'm going to run with this for a minute. We'll come back to that. Being able to fail and appreciate failure is important.
Great.
Because we're going to fail a lot in our lives. And when we fail, can we just see that as an experience? As opposed to this devastating, crushing feeling of like, oh no, I failed. My whole life is over. Just appreciate each moment. What I was going to say is when we have goals, we tend to set up this condition where if we don't achieve them, then we view ourselves as failures. And that's often very difficult, right? But Buddhist practice is not about having a goal or an end game. It's just recognizing that the core, fundamental, basic Buddhist teachings is Four Noble Truths. First one is life is filled with dukkha, suffering. We experience a lot of pain and suffering in our lives. Some extreme, some traumatic, some devastating, and then some just we don't like the temperature, we don't like the color of our shirt, we don't like the way our hair looks, all that little stuff. So we have a lot of suffering in our lives from simple to extreme. That's the first noble truth. The second is, what's the cause? The Buddha said the cause of our suffering, known as the three poisons, is greed, anger, and ignorance. We always want more. We're angry at the way things are, and we're ignoring reality. Meaning we're stuck thinking the entire world should exist as we perceive it. Or that it literally exists as we perceive it. Which is impossible because we all have completely different perceptions of each moment, right? So the practice is to overcome greed with generosity, overcome anger with compassion, overcome ignorance with wisdom. So the practice is generosity, compassion, and wisdom. The third noble truth is the cessation of suffering, cutting through craving and desire. Nirvana, liberation, freedom from suffering. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path, having correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. All of that's on Google. It's all free. Just stay on the first two Google search pages and you're probably pretty good, right? So Buddhism is about a practice and a way of life versus having this goal. And if we just practice kindness and compassion, our lives might be a little bit better, more gentle, happier. You know? So as a practitioner, I don't wake up each day and think like, okay, am I going to awaken today? Am I going to figure out nirvana today? Am I going to be enlightened today? Trust me, it ain't happening, dude. Right? I'm just working on, can I be kinder and gentler to myself each day than I was the day before? Can I forgive a little more today than I did yesterday? Can I try to understand the nature of my heart and my mind better today than I did yesterday? So, does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Other questions?
How does one deal with anger in their life?
How does one deal with anger in their life? Not very well, apparently.
No.
Right? So, there's a couple ways to look at this. Right? Brand new to Buddhist stuff? Yeah.
Also, I see.
Also 18, yes. God bless all you brand new Buddhist 18-year-olds, you know. I sure wish I had learned this at 18. Because I was an angry, pissed off, you know what, 18-year-old kid. And it was miserable. And I was depressed. And it sucked. And I drank too much, and I smoked too much, and I got into way too many fights. Does it sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah? Right on. What's your name?
Guillermo.
Guillermo, I'm Jeff. Nice to meet you. We could have hung out and been friends when we were 18 years old. So the first step, which isn't going to help you much right now, but I just want to, what we call plant the seed, is that I get it. We want to deal with anger, cope with it. But ultimately, what we're working towards, and this is just logical, so it should make common sense to you, hopefully, is we want to work towards anger no longer arising. Right? People often ask about like, well, how do I let go of something? The best way to let go of something is what?
Not to build it up in the first
Don't pick it up in the first place. You following me so far? So the best way to cope with, deal with, manage anger is to not have it to begin with. It's going to take longer than an hour class, right? But I want you to keep that in your mind as an 18-year-old that's beginning to explore the nature of your own anger, your own suffering, your own misery, right? That's the practice, is to see things and not get angry. Now, give that, a couple of years, okay? Like 10. But look around this room. There's a lot of people in this room that are a couple of years older than 28. And in 10 years, you'll be 28. Do you know how many people in this room wish that they no longer had anger at the age of 28? Oh God, how great would that be? So keep that as like, a real beautiful thing to work towards. And in a way, it's kind of coming back to the goal question, right? I just don't want to set it as like, okay, this dude 10 years ago told me I'd be done with anger by now. And now I'm pissed off because he lied. And you're hunting me down 10 years from now, right? So, but I just want to plant that seed. If that's what, it can happen. But the real question is like, okay, I got anger now. What am I going to do with it? There's two things I'll point out around that. One, the first is when you're angry, it's usually because you're not getting what? What you want. Last I checked, the world wasn't built around Guillermo's wishes, was it? No. My master, she used to say, learn to expect nothing from anyone ever. And you will never be disappointed and you will never be angry. You'll just experience each moment as it arises. So stop thinking that Guillermo deserves the world to operate around Guillermo's views. This in Buddhism is called ignorance. Now, I just met you. Actually, yes, I do mean to call you ignorant, but this is what ignorance is. Ignorance doesn't mean that we're dumb or stupid. It means we're ignoring that there's the reality of how the world works, and there's the reality that Guillermo thinks the world should work how Guillermo wants it to. Ain't ever gonna happen, dude. Following me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So to begin to understand that your anger is coming from your attachment, in Buddhism we talk about non-attachment, your attachment to your views. You've been in an argument with somebody recently?
No.
No, right on. Good for you.
I usually stuff the anger down.
You stuff the anger down.
Yeah.
Also not healthy, but that's all right. That's what therapy's for, right? So understand that anger often comes from our attachment to our views. And we think our views are right. Whether we stuff it down or find a way to cope with it is a different story. So understand that you're stuck on your views, as is everybody else. Now, another brief story I'll tell you is there was a kid, he was 20, so he was much older than you were. This was at San Diego State years ago. He was an intern at KPBS. I was doing meditation every week. He'd been doing this all of 3 weeks. And he came in one Monday and he said, "Hey, Jeff, I think I figured out how this meditation stuff can help my life." I said, "How's that?" And he said, "Well, I was at a party Friday night and this guy was talking to my girlfriend. I got real angry and I realized, I was probably going to get into a fight. I should take some deep breaths and walk away." I said, "It's wonderful. What happened?" He said, "I punched him." I looked at him and I said, "Congratulations." And he was like, "Jeff, I got into a fight." I said, "Yes, but there was a moment that you realized you should take some deep breaths and walk away. You didn't. But this was progress, baby steps, right?" So what meditation practice will do in time is help you begin to understand that as your thoughts arise, as your emotions arise, anger, sadness, depression, anxiety, stress, dealing with the lifelong trauma that so many of you are carrying, it is our mind's ability or inability to come back to present moment and breathe or snap. And most of us just snap. And we turn to addiction, we turn to fights, we turn to whatever it might be. All right. The last piece of advice I'll give you on this practice is when we feel anger in that moment, just stop for a minute. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. And recognize that whatever you're angry about, it'll be gone at some point. And you won't be angry anymore, or it won't matter anymore. If we honestly ask ourselves most of the things that we're angry about throughout our day, most of them are pretty trivial. The little things. I'm not saying we don't have heavy trauma and heavy things that go on and death and loss and heartbreak. And, we experience a lot of heavy stuff. But I found that most people throughout their day, the things that they get angry about, like 3 weeks later, they wouldn't even remember what it was. But in that moment, it seems like the biggest thing in the world. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So this is where we bring in the teachings of impermanence. And we recognize that what we're angry about is impermanent. It'll be gone at some point. It won't matter anymore. It won't be a big deal to us. Probably because we'll have something else to be angry about. So, is that helpful at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot for day one. What else? Thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about just a phrase that you shared a lot? It took me a long time to understand it, but I can finish it. It's not that having a beer is bad.
It's having 12.
It's that one beer.
It's the one beer leads to 2 beers. Yeah.
Which leads to 2 beers.
So what Pierre asked us to talk about something I've shared a lot over the years, and it was actually the story that you're referencing that I know you've heard was, this was in Taiwan, and this was a precept ceremony, and it was like this 7-day, crazy retreat, and then at the end you take these precepts, and So there were questions along the way, and one of the precepts is to refrain from intoxicants, right? Drugs, alcohol, anything that alters your state of mind. And so one of the questions was, this was a gentleman who said in his culture, it was very common that in business, when they close a deal, when they meet for a business meeting, that they would raise a glass to cheers and take a drink. And so this guy's concern was like, hey, I'm going to take these precepts to no longer have, alcohol, but, I need to continue to work and provide. And so when I go on these business deals and I'm closing, I don't want to, what do I do? And the master said, there's no problem. You raise your glass, you say cheers, you take a sip, and you set it down. Done. No problem. But there's nothing in the business deal that says you got to order 12 more. And then what do you do when you drink 12 more? Right? This is the problem. The problem is the intention. This is really the heart of what this teaching is what's the intention behind why we pick up. And this could be a drink, could be a drug, it could be Netflix for 17 hours straight without going pee, right? Whatever we're turning to. It could even be healthy, nothing wrong with Netflix unless 17 hours without peeing, that's a problem. But, right, the idea is that we're turning to something constantly. Healthy, unhealthy, whatever it might be. That we constantly turn to something. And so at the heart of this kind of practice, and what my master was talking about, is to ask yourselves, what is the intention behind why you're picking up the first drink, right? You're grabbing the first joint. You're watching the first episode of a 7-season show with 14 episodes per season, right? What is the intention behind that? And if we can look at it honestly and say, well, my intention is because I'm depressed and miserable and I want to escape, then we know there's a serious problem there. And then we have to address, why am I miserable? What am I trying to escape from? But the real work begins when we honestly ask ourselves, why are we turning to things? Yeah.
The question about meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So I've meditated kind of on and off for 5 years or so, but I struggle to make it a regular, even daily practice.
Sure.
And you mentioned at the beginning talking about the breath and how, well, if you're, so the breath at one hand, it's core, it's the starting point. On the other hand, if you're just focused on the breath, you're missing the training of your mind. So I think I'm sort of stuck on the breath.
Yeah.
And, want to get more into training of my mind through meditation and making it more of a daily, or just at least a more regular practice. So what tips, guidance?
Yeah. Great question. And just to paraphrase those, maybe didn't hear what you're really asking, whether you realize it or not, is two completely separate questions. One is, what happens during the practice of meditation when you're using the breath, but then you're missing the training of the mind train running? And the second part, and how do you deal with that? And what's the importance of one or the other? The second part is, how do you just cultivate a daily practice of meditation, right? Yeah. So, when you are, as you say, well, let me go this route. Everything I talked about at the beginning, as far as, and as you said, what you really want to do is be training the mind, right? The mind's training. The mind training is the focus on the breath. But what happens is, when you're doing your meditation, your mind is racing. And so from what I heard you say, and maybe you can clarify this part for me, from what I heard you say is, the way you asked that was almost as if you wanted to watch the wandering mind to know what it's doing. Am I wrong there? Or I just want a little more clarification from you. Because that's what I heard you say was you want to be able to look at the mind.
We train the mind.
Okay, understood. So you're trying to differentiate or understand when I say train the mind, what am I talking about?
Yeah.
Staying present.
Yeah.
Not with your thoughts. Your thoughts are, and you said train, but also like a train, like a choo-choo train. What happens is a common metaphor is like an airplane, right? As an airplane is all the way over there and it starts getting louder and louder and louder over our head. And then as it passes us, what happens? It gets quiet. What we don't want is our mind to get on that plane, right? Simple example. What we're wanting to train the mind with is to focus on, in Zen practice called single-minded focus. The Buddha used the breath. Could be a breath, could be a candle, could be a flower, an incense stick, something that is present, not the wandering mind. So what I'm working on in training, when I say training the mind, is breath in, breath out, thought arises, hunger. Recognize that thought, release it, back to the breath. Next thought arises, hunger. Recognize it, release it, back to the breath. Next thought, hunger. Recognize, release, back to breath. That's what I want to do. That's training the mind to stay present with the only thing that is actually present, which is sensation of breath. What I don't want to do, what is not training the mind, is thought arises, hunger. I'm hungry. What do I want to eat? I want a burrito. I want to go to Pokies. I want chips. I want cheese. I want sauce. Right? And so from one single thought of hunger, now I'm sitting there for 5 minutes telling myself a story about what I want to go eat. And now I'm hungrier than I was 5 minutes ago, and I'm pissed off because I'm sitting here and I can't eat. That's not a trained mind. We're using the breath to train the mind, not to figure out the mind, not to understand the mind. Good luck trying to figure out or understand any mind. Ultimately, the Buddha says there is no mind. But we ain't got time for that right now. It's too late. But if you bring up a great point that truly, and maybe in my way of speaking about it initially, there is maybe a lack of clarity there. But when I say train the mind, I don't mean understand it specifically. That's another practice to understand the nature of our mind and how it's working. But training the mind from a meditation standpoint is present moment. Now, why? Ever get angry, sad, or depressed? When you're angry, sad, and depressed, the mind is thinking about something that happened at what point in time? Past. Stress, anxiety, fear, worry, future. This is what our untrained mind does all day long, is it just wanders to the past, it wanders to the future. And all the stress, anger, anxiety, sadness, depression, fear, and worry is in the past and in the future. A trained mind just sits and stares at paint drying on a wall. Because that's what's happening. And in that present moment, I enter the world. You got anything on your mind or heart that you've been carrying around for 30 years? Yeah. When did that happen?
In the past.
30 years ago. And here you are, still with it today.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to not carry that with you? Mm-hmm. Train the mind to be present.
So then how about tips for daily practice?
But you got the first part first? Yeah. Tips for daily practice. You got a phone on you?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have like a calendar?
Mm-hmm.
Can you take it out?
Mm-hmm.
You know how to set an event? What time do you wake up in the morning?
Actually, my phone in my car.
Oh, right on.
I left it in there.
Yeah. Are you from Chicago? Midwest?
Cleveland.
Cleveland. Yeah, I just heard the accent just now. Well, here's the thing. That's funny. You don't have your phone on. Wow, I'm amazed somebody came in here without a phone on them, right? But here's the thing, and you all can try this as well if you'd like. When you get back to your car, before you start your car, take out your phone. If you get up at 6 a.m., put 6:15 to 6:20 a.m. meditation. Set an alarm for it. Daily. And put repeat, and then put end, never. And ever. I'm serious, man. You asked. You want tips? Here's tips, right? That phone tells us every single thing in the world. every doctor appointment, every class, every score, everything. Use it to have a reminder go off every single day to meditate for 5 minutes, not 20 minutes, not 40 minutes, not an hour. You don't need a class. You don't need to pay $50. You don't need incense. You don't need bells and whistles. You just need you and your crazy mind. And I want you to see that alarm go off every single day. And you may for the next 6 months, like, not today, not today, not today. But I want you every single day to recognize that you are skipping out on your 5-minute meditation and suffering. And then we have to deal with you because you're skipping out on your meditation. Do you have other people in your life that actually love you and care about you and you spend time with? Yeah. And do they like dealing with you when you're a pain in the ass? No. So you're doing this for you and them. And if you need to, in your little calendar, when you get to your car and you're setting up your, your alarm, daily alarm that ends never, there's a comment section there or notes. Put a couple names in there of the people that you're doing this for. Tell me your name. Tyler. I think I knew that, but yeah. Tyler, that's the first name you're putting in there. You're doing this for you. And then add 3 other people. Because what really happens is, who are we the best at letting down? Ourselves. So if you're going to let Tyler down and not do this practice, hey, that's okay. We've done that a lot. But those other 3 people, don't let them down. Does that help? Okay. Thanks, Tyler. Yeah, go ahead and then we'll wrap up.
There's also morning meditation here. There's only 3 of us here. But in
Yeah.
case you don't have.
And you can put those 3 people's names on your thing. Yeah.
Exactly. That's just a meditation. That's not a some.
Correct. It's just a silent sit. Yeah, 2:20. Yeah, 8 and 8:30. Yeah. Guillermo, one more and then we'll close. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
How does one overcome or help with suicidal thoughts? Because I just spent 3 months in a mental health facility, and although I feel more stable, the thoughts are still the same.
Yeah. Were you here in San Diego?
No.
Okay. Say again? Doesn't matter, is it? Yeah. So the question is, can I repeat the question? Is that okay? Just for those who maybe didn't hear it virtually. The question is, how does one deal with suicidal thoughts? Because you just spent 3 months in a mental health facility, and while you're doing better, my guess is you still have those thoughts, right? The first thing is to understand that they're just thoughts. First thing. I'm not saying they're good thoughts or happy thoughts or pleasant thoughts. What I really want you to understand is they're just thoughts. Okay? And they don't have to become anything more than that. Right? It's similar to the anger response that, like, hey, it's great to figure out how to manage it, but let's also try to figure out how to keep it from arising. Same thing with any thoughts we have, right? If we have negative thoughts like that, thoughts that are not healthy, understand they're just thoughts, and they don't have to become anything more than that. But then at the root of this, we want to begin to understand, why are those thoughts arising? Okay? I remember being 16 years old, right? Had a crushing breakup, sitting in the back seat of my car with a knife to my wrist. Now, granted, it was a switchblade that it probably wouldn't have done anything, right? But the thoughts were there. And so I say that simply to share with you that I understand those thoughts. And I've spent the last 25 years working with people that have those same thoughts. And they can go away. It helps. Similar to every single thing I've said tonight. If you begin to understand that you have the choice of what you want to think. And if you're going to have those thoughts, a lot of times, again, we can't control, especially for a long time, we can't control these thoughts, meaning they're just there. And you could be eating that burrito and fully happy eating the burrito and be like, man, this is a good ass burrito, but I still want to kill myself. And I mean that in all the seriousness in the world, okay? Recognize that thought. I love this burrito. I want to kill myself. I'm going to eat the burrito. Take another bite. I still want to kill myself. Take another bite. Read a cartoon. Think about something that you love, that makes you happy. It's shifting your focus and attention more, as much as you can, to things that make your heart smile. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I wish, my friend, these were simple, easy things that I could be like, and again, for those who are brand new to Buddhism, Buddhism is not like, here's page 17 on this book and follow the word of God and everything's going to be good. That's not Buddhist practice. Buddha was a human. He lived and died 2,500 years ago. He can't help you now. He can't save you, fix you, or heal you. You're on your own. But by on your own, the beauty of that is you have the ability, the power, the control to take care of your heart and mind. And you have a community of a bunch of us. That's what in Buddhism we call the Sangha, the community of people that, I don't want to put numbers on things, but the percentage of people sitting in this room right now that have had those thoughts, it's probably above 90, right? So you're not alone in those thoughts. Always express those thoughts, right? You just spent 3 months in a treatment program and you probably have other therapy modalities, things worked in. So always express them, always share them, always talk about them. And understand the impermanence of them. That as you get older and as you continue to develop skills, coping mechanisms, tools that you're working on, and medication, and all these things combined, you can have those thoughts less. And does that make sense so far? The last thing I'll say on this is I think it's beautiful that you're here. It's beautiful that you, for an 18-year-old kid in a room full of strangers for the first time, have the courage to even share that. Because what that says to me is you're working really hard at this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. Yeah? So one day at a time, one cry at a time, one suicidal thought at a time, one bite of a burrito at a time. One thought doesn't end your whole world. It's just a thought. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Did you want to?
Oh,
Or
I just wanted to share that.
yeah.
That, for meditation, for me, it's helped to go on walking meditations, and I'll take 4 steps, breathe in, and then take 4 steps, breathe out, and continue doing that. And I do that every day. That's helped a lot.
Yeah.
And as well as like mindfulness, like anything that I do in the day, like I'll take a shower and I'll tell myself I'm being kind and compassionate towards my body and practicing hygiene.
Yeah.
And then when I'm drying myself, like I feel the sensation of the towel on my face, for example. Like just being present and practicing that mindfulness has helped a lot.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the walking meditation is really wonderful for people who have a hard time just sitting for a long period of time, or any period of time for that matter. And then the mindful practices of just staying present with every single thing you're doing allows us to keep the mind from wandering to all the madness. So again, there's another example of, I'm talking about using the breath, but when we're washing a dish, right, when we're drinking tea, whatever it is, if you're mindful and focused on that one thing, then you're not focused on everything else. So, all right, I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. So a few quick announcements just before you head out. Our Dharma Bum host, Eddie, just share a few words with y'all. Thanks, Eddie.
Well, hi everyone, I'm Eddie, tonight's host. We opened the Dharma Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay and close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again soon.
Thanks, Ed. Thank you all.
Thank you.